This hangout is on the air live. All right. Hey, everybody. I'm here with Nick Cole. Say hi, Nick.
Hi.
So I'm in Fredericksburg, Texas, about 2 hours south of where I normally live, but I come down here to do any of my video stuff. And Nick is over in Hollywood Land, California, and we're going to be talking a little bit about publishing and writing and stuff and that sort of thing. So, Nick, in case some of the people that tune in to me don't know you, why don't you do a quick introduction of yourself? Can you do a quick one?
Yeah, oh yeah, of course. I was originally cast to play the role of Han Solo back in 1977. No. About 2011, I wrote a book called The Old Man and the Wasteland, and it was a big sort of indie success, and it did really well. Then the publishers came and said, would you write 2 sequels? So I wrote 2 sequels, and then my next novel just came out called Soda Pop Soldier, and I met Michael through Facebook. We had a lot of common interests, share a lot of common interests, and are passionate about good storytelling. And hopefully here shortly in the future, we're going to get to do that together.
That's right. I'm just answering some Facebook people that are looking for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep talking because some people can't find us, but all of this is going to be on YouTube. So
yeah, why not?
So we're going to pretend like everybody's already arrived.
Yes.
Yeah. So you just now recently released Soda Pop Soldier, which has been my favorite book of 2014 by far. Fun book, and that one was through Harper as well. So I was going to ask you. You've been on both sides of the publishing street, and dealing with indie publishing and then mainstream publishing. Talk a little bit about all the changes that are going on, but where you see things going and how writers might want to look at this when the dust clears from everything that's happening right now in publishing.
To tell a nice, long, protracted story and to really kind of let everybody know what I think of what's going on. I started out as an independent guy. I had an agent before I was published, and he was trying to sell a satire that I wrote, sort of a dark Hollywood satire, and he couldn't really get any takers, and that was the sort of the age of publishers being the gatekeepers for books getting into bookstores. And I was seeing a lot of books get out there, that I thought, really, this is what you guys are going with? And I felt that I'd written sort of the modern Hollywood take on Catch-22, and I thought it was uproariously funny, but no one was really taking it, and publishers were interested in a lot of important books, and I found, never to bash anybody's work, I just found a lot of that stuff boring. At the same time, I was writing not blog posts, but in little online science fiction magazines and submitting things. And on a really great day, someone would publish one of my short stories and give me $25, and I thought that was pretty cool. Right. So I wrote The Old Man in the Wasteland, and I gave it to my agent. I said, this is the latest thing I've written, and he read it, and he said, it's too much like The Road, and I don't want to represent it. And so then I was reading all the blogs and all the independent people who were saying, storming the Bastille. And so I said, I'll try to do this on my own. And I hired a cover artist and a formatter and did everything and put it up there. And after about 2 or 3 months, it really, really took off. And I had one press, a small press, Permuted Press. They came in and they said, we'd like to buy this. And I said, oh, that, I was excited. The publisher was going to talk to me. And they offered me $1,000 for it. And, I was like, no, I'm having too much fun, every day checking the numbers and enjoying it. And so I let that go. Then St. Martin's contacted me, and their offer was a little bigger. And so at that point, I went back to that agent who said he didn't want to represent it. I said, hey, I'm starting to get some buzz. I'm #1 in sci-fi and Amazon. It made it up to number 66. What do you think about maybe representing me here? So he got involved and he started a bidding war between a few houses, and some houses passed altogether. And it ended up at HarperCollins and their science fiction imprint called Harper Voyager.
Right.
And at that point, I thought, everything's groovy. I can just kind of do my own thing and coast, and let it be what it's going to be. And the big publishers are going to take over and do everything. And the real truth and honesty of the situation is that things immediately started to go downhill with the big publisher. I was the smallest fish in the room. I wasn't completely sure, and they weren't completely sure what to do with me. I began to believe that they just kind of freaked out and wanted an independent writer who was doing well in their stable. But in reality, it took them 1 year to publish what I had already published. And
Right.
They didn't really do anything with it. They just took my file and put it back up, and I was so crestfallen and infuriated at the same time. And I'd gone from really good earnings with Amazon every month to nothing. I mean, just my advance and nothing. And the truth of it is I'm still earning out the advance.
Right.
One of the critical killers that I found is that when they took down my version of the book and they put up their version, I didn't really understand the algorithm really as it works.
Right.
But what that effectively did is it took my book, took everybody who liked it, the 80,000 people who bought it, and just threw them out the door, flushed them down the toilet. And
Right.
so effectively the book that they were putting up was like a new book that had no momentum, no nothing.
Right.
They did the same thing with my second book. And the third book, they finally got into print bookstores, and it did okay, but it didn't do great. And Soda Pop Soldier just came out a month ago, and I'm still kind of seeing the same behavior. And now I'm negotiating a new contract with my publisher, and it seems bizarre. I gave them 7 pitches, and they, have some different ideas about what they want me to write. And they're really kind of saying, well, let's see how Soda Pop Soldier does. And for now, let's write a digital-only book. And I'm like, well, okay, what's that? And so it's basically they want to do what I can do on my own and pay me less for it. So
Right.
I'm not super. I like being able to go into a bookstore and see your book. And I think when you publish with a publisher, there is a long game to publishing a publisher as opposed to the immediate results of Amazon. But at the same time, it's a big exercise in patience. I understand why a lot of writers go nuts working with publishers.
Well, it's really comes down to how much do you want to pay for those benefits. And
Yeah.
I'm certainly not an anti-mainstream publishing guy, and me. I'm willing to talk. I'm willing to talk to anybody and any kind of deal that can work out. Right now, we're just really in this period. It's a strange, weird, wild period where they really don't know what they're doing, and it's like they don't know what they have to offer and what it is that authors are looking for. And so sometimes we have to help them with that, maybe, and communicate the things that will be beneficial. But in reality, like you mentioned, the digital only, that's really that's really just a way for them to self-publish it and take a large portion of the proceeds, because there's absolutely nothing that they're offering you that you can't and won't be doing completely on your own.
No, not at all.
They will make the argument that they're going to do editing and they're going to do all this strong background stuff, but in reality, we've shown we can do that better. So
Exactly.
It's interesting to me, you having experienced some pretty extreme success in self-publishing, and then having this experience, because I talk to so many authors that are both mainstream and indies and a lot of hybrids, and the stories are pretty common. And so, I think when it gets down to it is we're almost in a period where we almost have to wait and see Exactly. Somebody's going to get it. Somebody's going to figure it out. And it's just and once one of them figures it out, the rest of them will figure it out.
I mean, let's look at the state of affairs. Where do you sell books at? You can sell them in a bookstore. There's really only one national chain left. And as I understand it, that chain is dying on the vine.
Right.
There's all these other, like, hey, Kobo, hey, iTunes, hey, blah, 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 blah. I don't know how much things are changed, because one of the terrible things that happens when you become a big 5 published author is you don't get to look at the numbers, you don't get to track results, you don't get to say, but let's just go back to 2011. Am I wrong in still knowing or advocating that 90% of the sales seem to be from Amazon, at least digitally? I mean, do you put up Kobo numbers or, whatever else is out there? But yet at the same time in big publishing, they literally talk as much trash as they can about Amazon. Right. And they pretend like there's some kind of magical outlet or that other things are going on. But I worked in a bookstore, I worked in a Borders, and I worked in a Borders cafe. And I've always told this to people who try to sell books or fantasize about having bookstores, or I'll just shout it out whenever I walk through a Barnes & Noble. And I'll just say, you really need to take the coffee in the cafe out of here. Because at the end of the night, every night, you just clean up stacks and stacks of magazines and books that people who are unemployed or are too cheap or retired or whatever it is just sit there and read and don't purchase. And guess what? When I was unemployed, I used to do that too. I used to go to a certain Barnes & Noble and I would sit down and I would pick up a book that I had reshelved the day before and continue to read it. And I never paid for it. And I sat there and did that. So I was just as culpable. And I would say to all bookstores, you need to take out the comfortable seating, you need to take out the coffee and the muffins, and you need to sell books, and you need to have booksellers who are book lovers actively patrolling the shelves, recommending, creating enthusiasm, and asking for a sale. And if people are going to camp out on the floor and read books, that's just, you're never going to sell anything. And that's the physical bookstore. The digital bookstore, at the end of the day, there's a gorilla in the room, and it's Amazon. And I'm sorry that everybody's upset about that. I made a lot of money off Amazon, and I enjoy them.
Right. Well, I don't have enough experience on to say what's best for bookstores to do. I think there is a little bit of resurgence in the independent bookstores that are really focusing even on local authors and events and bringing a lot more curated lists and all those type of things. I shop for books like I shop for clothes, which if you'll look, I don't. If I do go to a bookstore, it's because I'm going to look for a book, and I go there, and back in the days when I was still living like everybody else, if I had to go to the mall to get something, I knew what I wanted, where it was, and I walked to the shelf and I grabbed what I wanted, and I buy books the same way. So I'm not really the kind of person that maybe you get good advice from on how to buy books in a bookstore, because I rarely would go and just walk around a bookstore and looking to see what's there. I know what I like, and I usually know what I'm looking for.
I'll find interesting things in bookstores, and I like to wander, and I love bookstores. But there is, we could get into this whole sort of societal and political discussion, but there is an entitlement in people. You probably have a grandfather or a dad who was raised in the Depression. And what you can tell, you can always identify those people, because whenever they walk into a store, they put their hands in their pockets. They don't touch anything.
Right.
And the reason that is because back in those days, if you touched it, you bought it. And they did not have the money to buy. Nowadays, we have entire generations of people, and as I confessed, I'm one of them, who just pick things up, get as much value as we can, and put it down and feel no burden to pay for it. And that's why Amazon is great, because it literally prevents people from this sort of boorish, piggish behavior. The bookstore is not. One time I said to somebody, I said, they were, well, that's a long story, but the bookstore is not a library for people to do research or to make a decision about a book. You're there to buy books. Unfortunately, bookstores are not proactive that way. So, this is all a discussion about bookstores, but I don't know how relevant it is because I don't know that bookstores are putting up the numbers. I want them to, yeah.
I want them to too, and there's ways they could do that. And I've put out in my blog, I've put out ways that, if the bookstore, if an indie bookstore near me would put in a one of these print-on-demand machines, and they could, any book that I want into, I walk up to the counter, I say I want Soda Pop Soldier, they turn around, they print it for me, hand it to me, or deliver it within 12 miles for free, or something like that, whatever, maybe for a $5 fee or something like that. I would pay more money for a print book that I could get right when I want it. And so I think that that's the only way they're ever going to compete with Amazon, is they need to, small businesses need to be able to do these things, and they can do them, and they can do them for a reasonable amount of money. The whole point, though, is that not that many people are buying books in that way anymore. And so I prefer print books. I love to read and buy print books. I have over 3,000 print books in my library. But just because of space and because of expense, probably 90% of the books I buy right now, I buy digitally. And I think that's probably true of most people. And so,
and you can haul them wherever you want, and you can have them at 1 o'clock in the morning if you can't sleep. I mean, there is a come to truth moment in this society where people either need to get that Amazon figured it out and did it right, and if you don't like it, then you need to build Macy's on the other corner. But wishing that Amazon would go away isn't going to make things happen.
Well, and there's people that could compete, and they do stupid things that really, really hurt. So what I'd like to talk about, though, is how this reality, the reality of the 800-pound gorilla and the fact that these other outlets are not really that effective, is that makes this process of the change, there's this thing we're going through right now where the mainstream publishers have not quite figured out how to make that work for them. In my experience, they don't know what they're doing right now. It's like they don't understand that buyers have changed. They don't understand that authors have changed, and they still want so bad for that other way to work that they haven't really. And I said someone's going to figure it out. Somebody will, and when they do, other people will start doing what they're doing, and it'll. But there's decisions that have to be made by writers today and authors today based on how they're going to distribute their work. And so now you're kind of in that situation right now. Pretty much everything I have is being self-published. I've got a few things that are being shopped by the agent, but so are you looking at maybe going back and doing some indie published stuff?
The deal that I've made with Harper right now is that I'm going to probably do this digital project for them, and I want to be able to go other places and also do my own stuff. And so my agent and I are kind of committed to that right now. But I think the thing that we all have to realize, and I have a really wonderful agent, and that he finally gets that this non-compete thing isn't really helping anybody.
Right.
No author should have to sign a non-compete thing, contract. And for people who don't know, that means effectively, and this is how publishing always did it, when you signed a book with a publisher, yay, you're published, you can only publish with them. You can't put anything else out to anybody, or you can't put things up on Kindle and Amazon. You can't go to another publisher, and it's weird thinking that prevents people from doing it, makes people make those kind of contracts. Right. Because here's how I look at it. I have 10 books, let's say, and I put all 10 books out. Now, all 10 of those books are going to reach different people, and it doesn't matter who published them. If you write well and you write one book and it was published by, say, St. Martin's Press, the person that goes into the bookstore or the digital bookstore to find your next book, because that's what we all do. We read someone that we like and we go absorb their entire catalog. Well, they don't say, oh, this book wasn't published by St. Martin's, I'm not going to read this. They don't care. And so I think publishers have assigned themselves some gravitas that's hurting them. That book from St. Martin's is nothing but free publicity.
Right, and I think they misunderstand the fact that people will buy a lot of books really fast, kind of like the Netflix idea of downloading a season, watching, binge watching, and I think people absolutely do that. In fact, I think the number one comment I get from everybody who reads my books is, when's the next one? Why can't I get it right now? Why isn't it already available? Exactly. The other thing is that the publishers have these rules that were all put into place back when they got a printed manuscript and they had to take that by hand to a typesetter, and there was all this stuff that went on, and it took months and months and months, and what they didn't want you doing is going out there while they were paying for all this advertising, marketing, and promoting for you to maximize that for somebody else's profit. And the reality now is that from my little off-grid office in Central Texas, I can do better promoting and better marketing than most of the big five can do. And I think I just, as of 2 days ago, I've had 4 either books or anthologies with my name on them in the top 100 since July 7th.
Hey, so, congratulations.
Yeah. And it's just the reality of the thing is that it takes mobility, it takes the ability to understand the changes. Amazon will change their algorithms pretty regularly, and there's things that you can do that'll work that stop working. And when you talk about this sometimes with people in mainstream publishing, they have no idea what you're even talking about. They're still thinking, it's like taking a business card and throwing it in your garage and thinking someone's going to find it. And so some of the marketing methods that they use just don't work anymore. And so I was in Atlanta at Dragon Con, and I've actually got a picture of it. My daughter took a picture of me, and right behind my head is this poster. And on this, it was a 1x2 poster, and it was a trilogy of books by a female author. And nowhere on that poster did it tell me where I could buy it, who the publisher was, or how, or anything about it. It was just the woman's name in the book. And of course, I have my cell phone there. I could pull up Amazon and I could find it. But I have to ask myself, how many people riding a train saw that 1-foot-by-2-foot poster next to all the other ones, which are for hospitals and prenatal care and all of these other things? Are people really looking up there to find books? And that's really how a lot of the mainstream publishers look at marketing. It's this very brute force type of marketing that used to work, but I don't think that stuff works that well anymore.
Well, I totally agree with you. I think the supermarkets are selling the bulk of their successful books,
right?
And they're taking a chance on that woman and throwing it up against the wall and seeing if it sticks. And they're hoping for another Twilight. They're hoping for another Harry Potter, but they're not necessarily worried about it because James Patterson's going to sell 1 billion books.
Right.
So there isn't that burden to perform and succeed, and that's one of the things that I would say about to everybody right now who was in my place or is in my place or has this little book out on Amazon and it's doing well and it's getting reviews and the big publisher is going to come looking, and you have to be prepared that they're not really. They'll say things like, "We hope you succeed," and blah blah blah, but they're really wanting you to just end up wildly successful with no explanation how.
Right.
And then they get a bunch of benefits of it and they get to ride the train. But I don't know that they're willing to do. I don't know. I love my publisher in that they gave me an awesome marketing person, and she just really went to town trying to market my book. She got me tons of blog posts, and I was in their super reader program and stuff like that. But I have to kind of measure the fruits. I don't really see the sales right now on Amazon, and this is a book that was literally star recommended by Publishers Weekly,
right?
And it's only got 12 reviews.
And by me.
Yeah, exactly. So, what was that all about? Like, what was all that effort for? A month in, and my agent said to me the other day, well, it takes time to build. And then I said, yeah, but every review I'm getting is asking me for a sequel. And so he went to my publisher and said, well, how about a sequel? And they said, well, we need to wait and see if it's a success. And I remember all the blog articles I wrote, the Publishers Weekly thing, them getting it into their super readers program, them promising that I would have access to their mailing list, them having me at Comic-Con, which is the biggest, sort of entertainment event of the year. And it's slow. It's slow enough to be depressing.
This may sound weird coming from me, but when I hear you talk, I'm in several. I'm in a cyberpunk story bundle right now that's out there, and so I've got a constant conversation going with all these authors and the arranger of this cyberpunk bundle, and then I'm in a space opera box set that launches tomorrow, which is called Stars and Empire, and so we have a constant conversation going for that. And these are people, mostly indies, who understand that the business has changed, that we're talking about algorithms, we're talking about how many sales per review, and when do they hit? Do they hit on Tuesday because they run their numbers on Tuesday evening? These very, very complicated conversations that continue to happen. And so, and I mean this as a joke because I want to make you smile, but when I hear you and people talking about what the mainstream publishers are doing for marketing, it's almost like your granddad going, we used to go down to the store and get us some Chico sticks.
It feels like that. It feels
it's
like
very analog to me, and it's which is weird coming from me. It's a very analog way of doing business, and it's not that you don't want to go out there and do guest blogs and those things, but when it really comes down to it, it's almost like one at a timing it and trying to find 12 readers here and 5 readers here and 20 readers here, when the people that are finding success in launching books right now on Amazon are finding ways to do hundreds and thousands within a very short amount of time. So, for example, Pennsylvania, I've got the 5 parts plus the omnibus, and 7,000 of those titles have sold since September 1st. And so, and I'm not just throwing numbers out there. I'm saying there's what the mainstream publishers need to figure out is how do they find the people that can study these markets and study Amazon and become an expert at it, so that they can know, okay, we're going to launch a book on this day. We're going to do, and it's not all about money. A lot of it's about timing and understanding. Yeah. So that's kind of my spiel on that. I just sometimes you scratch your head because I don't see. I have a really, really good friend who's a mainstream published guy, and he most of his books have launched to low 5-figure ranking. Yeah, and I don't know how that is monetarily feasible for very long. I don't know unless Patterson is paying for all of that, because I don't understand. If you're not even selling a book or 2 or 10 a day, I don't know how that can continue in the
My
business
feeling is
model
like in a perfect world, you should be selling about 200 books a day everywhere.
Right.
Now, I went into Barnes & Noble one day, and I said, I was able to make friends enough with a bookseller that he went into the computer and kind of gave me some background information. And he said, actually, you sold so many books for us that you are now an author we always keep on the shelves.
Right.
So that was interesting. But what does that mean? And like in that store alone, he was able to tell me they'd sold 28 copies of my book. Right. So I don't know how many Barnes & Noble stores there are, what you can average, those kind of things. But I guess the thing that comes out of my story to everybody is big publishing is great, all those kinds of things. They're going to sometimes work at cross purposes to you and be counter to sort of that indie way of thinking and blah, blah, blah. But you kind of need to run your own marketing game. They won't prevent you from doing that. In fact, they will encourage you to do that. But I made that typical mistake of thinking, I can cruise now. And it's not like I'm lazy. I just thought, well, now I can dedicate more time to writing. And then the other problem is you just named all these things you're part of. my publisher says, hey, whoa, slow down, Whippy, if I try to give them anything more than one a year.
Right.
And that's just not going to cut it when you guys are pumping out 5 and 6 novels a year. That's not going to cut it.
Yeah, and that's on the medium range. You have a lot of indies are maybe doing 2 novels, and you have the Russell Blakes and some of those guys who are doing 9 or 10. So,
but let's just real quick, let's touch up, just because maybe big publishing is spying on me. Right. I want to say that the one thing that a lot of indies have is that they have the speed and the mobility and a lot of that stuff, and you can do stuff, but at the same time a lot of indies are shooting themselves in the foot, not imitating the good aspects of big publishing, and that's going to be in putting out quality work, paying for quality covers, really taking the time to edit. There's a big author that everybody thinks is a big deal, and he one day was bragging about writing a story and then hitting publish within 2 hours.
Right.
And I was like, that's a dangerous, dangerous game to play, because you're not respecting the reader when you do tricks like that. Editing is taking the time to make a really, really, really good story for your reader. Getting rid of the amount of times that you use it's improperly, or there. And also, taking the time to put the story away for 8 weeks and come back and read it with fresh eyes. Doing everything that you can to make the novel as the best that it can be. Now, that's the strength of big publishing. They really want you to write a great novel, and they do everything. They give you massive editing. They give you coaching and critiques. They give you time to write it. They give you money to do a really good job. Mm-hmm. And we've all read
the money.
Yeah, they will, though. When they give you that advance, what they're saying is, we want you to take your time and write a really good novel here and make all our corrections and listen to our advice and go through the line edits. And even then, when you have an entire corporation helping you with your novel, there's still going to be mistakes.
Right.
So if you're some indie that thinks it's cute to write a story in a coffee house and hit publish 2 hours later, I guarantee you, you might have sold to a couple of fans that you already had. But what is the likelihood that you turned somebody off and they said, you're just using me now? You're just booty calling me, because you needed what, to pay a bar bill? You can't do that stuff. This is heart attack serious. You gotta do a good job for readers, because that's what they're looking for out of you. And writing.
What I wanted, Nick, was strong opinions.
Yeah, exactly. So you got to be careful with publishing. And I would say to everybody, The Old Man in the Wasteland did really well. Some people would tell you there's typos in it, mistakes in it. I edited that thing for 4 months straight, from noon until 5 o'clock every day, reading it out loud over and over and over. And I think I got like maybe 28 or 30 run-throughs, like performing the book.
Right.
And even then there were still mistakes, but it did well. And if you're writing something and you're reading a certain big somebody, his blog about how to make $68K a month, and you think you're just going to luck into it and fluke it out and people are going to see the diamond in the rough in your novel, no, you are going to turn people off. You are going to irritate people. And that is probably, as we were bashing big publishing, if I were to bash indies, that's what a lot of indies are doing wrong. You're writing garbage, and you're leaving.
You're preaching to the choir here.
Yeah. So there's that.
Yeah, I'm 100% behind you on that, and I think it's one of the big things that we're trying to emphasize is not only making sure that we're putting out quality, because it affects everybody and it affects the opinion of the industry and what it is we're doing, but it also it's a part of being a good citizen in this business, and people feel like they've been ripped off when they and it. I mean, I get a lot of reviews, and so people will tell you if they're finding mistakes, and I'm not talking about a typo that might have slipped through. I'm talking about I read a lot of reviews. And I follow some reviewers because I like what they say and all that. And you'll find books that review after review after review says, "Hey, man, pay for an editor." You know, your readers are telling you what to do. You know,
and sometimes you're so. Here's what big publishing does to you. Those ladies that are my editors at Harper Voyager, they have studied the craft of editing and the leadership of editing, which that's what being an editor is. It's a leader to an extent. And sometimes you'll write stuff, and I'll read it in indies whose stuff I read, certain ones, and I can tell they're so glued to this thing they want to put in there, and it really means a lot, but it's not serving the story, or they haven't communicated it well, and your beta readers are not going to say that to you. Your mom is not going to say that to you. Your wife's not going to say it to you. Very few people will tell you that you have to kill your babies.
Right.
But the editor will. They'll say, "I know you like this," and I always say, my rule of thumb is I do everything my editor wants me to do in every book except for one thing. I let myself have one battle that I'm going to win, but generally I take 99% of their suggestions, and I think that they do strengthen books. In Soda Pop Soldier, there's an homage to the movie Aliens. And the first 3 chapters there's just 3 chapters that reference this. And it's a pretty big, exciting moment in the book. I wrote that, and I was like, great, and I'm out. And I turned in the book, and the editor came back to me, and she said, you either need to take this out, or it's got to pay off later. And she was absolutely right. And I did pay it off, and it was I would have never done it on my own, but it was such a cool moment when I'm like, oh, these guys saved the day. She was right. I would have never seen that. My wife wouldn't have seen that. No one would have seen that.
For our moment of balance, I got to tell you, I read a lot of nonfiction, so those are usually pretty flawless. The last 3 mainstream published books I read that were fiction had huge errors in them. And one of them, well, it's not one of the last 3, but one of the notable ones was William Forstchen's 1 Second After, which is a great book, by the way. That thing was edited horribly.
Yeah, well, that book was just a theoretical exercise. It was more of a paper than a book. I just read Swan Song, and gosh, they're still using gas in Swan Song 8 years after everything goes sideways.
Right.
And the shelf life of gas is 6 months.
Right.
So it was amazing that you can have books coming out of big publishing houses, and now with the internet, you have to count on it. People are more knowledgeable, and especially with the sort of libertarian and prepper community, these people know hard facts. If you're going to write in this universe, no, they can't. And someone in Old Man in the Wasteland, I did that. I had people using gas 40 years after the fact, so I went in and cleaned it up and invented a super gas called JP9. Right. And military developed that, but I had to have a story for it. You can't just say, "Oh, they raided a gas station," and went on being Mad Max. If you're gonna violate the rules, you got to have some backstory. Right. And people in publishing, are wonderful, lovely people who come from massive ivory towered schools. No, I don't think they know how to, thread splice some comma wire, or what it takes to get a generator working. They don't have that skill set. And if you're having fun writing that, great. You should be having fun writing it, but you shouldn't count that they're going to know the mistakes, because they don't.
Right. Right. Okay, so let's talk about this. Let's talk about Soda Pop Soldier. Where did the idea come from?
I think it came out of. I had started to write that novel several years ago, and it was just I was playing some video games, and I was just thinking to myself, gosh, wouldn't it be cool if this book was like a combination of 2 of my favorite video games, which are Battlefield and Call of Duty, which people who play video games, you being one, Michael, know that these are 2 absolutely separate beasts.
Right.
This is like football and classical
Australian rules football.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't go together. But if you ask any gamer, they would say, wouldn't that be great if they did? Like,
Right.
and everybody imagines it would be some sort of Reese's peanut butter cup type thing.
Right.
So I wanted to do that in this book, and then I kind of wanted to dabble in fantasy without writing a full-on fantasy. So there's some fantasy aspects, and then at the same time, I wanted to tell a noir because I live in Los Angeles and I read a lot of Raymond Chandler and I write on the streets of Los Angeles late at night. So I wanted to kind of have that noir, gritty thriller, and that's where it came out of. And where did Pennsylvania come from?
Well, I'm going to get to that. I'm going to talk to you about Soda Pop Soldier first because I got things. This is a great book, and I'm just everybody knows what I think about it. This is one of the best books I've read since Ready Player One. Oh. And one of the things I liked about Ready Player One was it was so immersive, and not just the gaming aspects of it, but the entire world was immersive. And so he had this kind of weird world that was the real world, where you had these campers, that were stacked up in these towers. And this is much like the world you built with Soda Pop Soldier, but then you get immersed in another world, and then even within that, you get immersed in another world. I have a bet that everybody and I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but
okay.
Every single person who I know who has read Soda Pop Soldiers knows there's one scene. This is the scene and that scene is worth it. The whole book is awesome, but that pays off the whole book. My heart was thumping in my chest. It was like one of the most amazing experiences that I've had reading a book. So we'll just call
it. You are too kind.
No, it's true, but we'll call it the scene. And my bet is that the scene came first, and then you wrote the rest around it. Is that correct?
Gosh, I'm trying to remember. No, I think that it led to that, and it was more I needed to keep all the balls in the air of, okay, well, he has this. The character is a professional war gamer in the future, so he plays, in this sort of modern warfare Call of Duty style game. But he needs money, so he's playing in this illegal sort of World of Warcraft meets Dark Vegas kind of game.
Right.
And so I had to balance all that, but then I needed to kill him, because the main villain wants to kill him, and so he has to get on a jet. And
don't give away too much.
No, I know, but I play chess, and obviously you're a Russian.
Right.
What do we call you, an enthusiast?
Right.
A scholar, a Russian scholar. And so it just needed to be that game of chess. And then I realized, because I'm an actor, I act out a lot of the parts for the characters. One day I'd like to do my own audiobooks because I act these books out before I read them. So when I'm writing the villain, I'm that guy.
Right.
When I'm, and I just realized, oh, this is his way to solve it right here. And it was just, no, I guess I'm going to say that I'm just going to lay the blanket statement on this. I pray before I'm a Christian. Mm-hmm. I pray before I write everything. And
right.
There are moments like that God gives you that you realize it would be false for me to say I came up with this. And I know you know the same thing. Sometimes there's just a turn of phrase that's so beautiful, or the Wasteland Saga does this a lot to me. I'll be thinking about it, and I wrote this book 2 years ago, and I'll see a connection, and I'll go, oh, wow, I never realized that part about it. It's, we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and I don't know that we always know what level we're working on, but it was from God. That was a gift moment from God, and I was so glad that it came together like that in that moment. I do have scenes. I know what you're talking about. You have the scene like, oh, I have to use this.
Yeah, I did that in Pennsylvania. The barn raising.
Yeah. But the way that publishers are, they're like my most current battle right now. Do you have cats?
I don't. Well, my children have cats.
Yeah. A cat will go wherever you don't want it to go.
Right.
And that's the danger of having a favorite scene with a big publisher, because guess what? They're going to say something asinine like, "Well, Witness did the penultimate barn raising scene, and we don't want this to be typical." And you're like, "But this scene means everything." You know, like that's how they are. They go exactly after the thing that you think is great. Right. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong, but as a writer, when you're an indie, you're kind of working in this fun vacuum, and you don't have to be questioned like that. You get to roll the dice and see if it works. But anyways, you were saying the barn raising scene in Pennsylvania?
Well, yeah, it was the same kind of thing where I actually had that scene in mind from the beginning of writing the first part, and
it's a great scene. I love it.
I knew it was going to have to happen, but
when I did my fan fiction for your series that's coming out, I had to restrain myself from using a typical Amish barn raising scene, and so I did replumbing a spring room,
right,
as a symbol. But I love that. That was great.
Well, the question I had as I was writing was, it was almost like it had to happen. It was a trope that you cannot not do. You could not do it, but after all the build-up, I don't see how I could have not at least had it represented. And then, you know, my idea then was, of course, this is the time of the ultimate attack. So, but I don't want to at all compare that to the Soda Pop Soldier scene, because that's something that's really, really very special. But
hey, you made it to number 73 the other day. Was it 73, 77?
Right, 74.
Yeah. I'll let you know when Soda Pop Soldier makes it that high.
Well, I'll tell you this: when it does, and when they decide to make a movie out of it, they will build the movie around that scene.
Oh,
I have no doubt.
That would be a fun scene.
It was very visual for me as I was experiencing it, reading it. And I just recently read Chris Porteau's Gettysburg, which is Pennsylvania fanfic, and it has some pretty fantastic battle scenes. And so I get really wrapped up in those. For somebody who's nonviolent, sometimes those can be very. My heart was pumping like 30 minutes after I read Gettysburg. By the way, that comes out tomorrow, everybody. So look up Chris Porteau.
Maybe there's something in that. You know, I mean, I think a lot of people are desensitized to violence now, and when you make a commitment to stay away from it, maybe that's, you know, I mean, there is an attraction in violence in males. I mean,
right.
That's why we watch sports. That's why we want to watch Jack Bauer shoot people. You know, but we have a society now that's trying to demonize it, yet at the same hand glorify it. So,
right.
You know, maybe that's the attraction.
Sure. Yeah, and I've written some battle scenes, and especially with the Last Pilgrims, that were pretty on your seat kind of stuff. But okay, so what other projects do you got going now? I want to talk a little bit about the anthology later on towards the end, and what you're working on and what I'm working on. But as far as stuff that we should be looking for coming out pretty soon, what do you have?
I have a triptych, which is a word that's not thrown around a lot, but it's a fun word. It's kind of like a trilogy, but it's sort of more stories that don't necessarily interconnect, but are set in the same universe and maybe provide a greater picture of the whole. Right. And that's called the Lost Angeles triptych, meaning, you know, like Los Angeles, but Lost Angeles.
Right.
And that starts off with a book that I'm currently editing right now called The End of the World as We Knew It. And it is, you know, what I tell people is it's the Zombies meets the Notebook. And it's just sort of the first part of it is a memos from ground zero from a survivor to her fiance, who she's going to marry in 6 weeks, but obviously the zombocalypse destroys that. And then the rest of the book is her fiance, who's a stockbroker in New York, journeying from Manhattan, which is really one of the only safe zones, by train on an armored train, and he works as a launderer to Los Angeles to find her, which is also a safe zone. And what I'm doing in this book is I'm moving into the post-zombie apocalypse. Zombie stories are awesome. I love them. I'm a big Walking Dead fan. But we're all doing that, and I thought I wanted to go somewhere new, which is what happens after a zombie apocalypse. Now, don't worry, there's still zombies. There's only two places that are really secure, and if you wander outside of those places, you run into zombies. And then the other two books in the triptych are called Lost Angels, which is a sort of Raymond Chandler meets zombies in L.A., and it's about a private detective who runs a fortified bookstore, and he's asked to find an heiress who went missing in the middle of the zombie apocalypse and find out if she's alive or dead or if she's murdered. And you can imagine the immensity of that task in sort of a corpse-riddled world. And then this is the irony of all ironies. My publisher didn't want either two of those books, even though the first one's written. They want the third book in the series, which is called 395. And I don't know if many people know who Jim Thompson is, but you would probably know him in that he wrote the Stanley Kubrick movie The Killing, and he wrote The Grifters. He was very sort of hard-boiled noir crime fiction writer, but he mainly, The Getaway was a movie that was made out of one of his books.
Right.
So he wrote that kind of stuff, and so I pitched it as Jim Thompson meets zombies, and my editor, like a little baby kitty cat, went right for that one, and I was like, I wasn't even planning on writing that book. I had, I want to write it. It's fun, and I'm making notes for it right now, but it was like the furthest thing from my mind that I would write. So that's what they want. So I'm probably going to put The End of the World as We Know It out fairly soon, and then I'm going to let them put their digital version out. And then I'm working on another project with you and some other authors, but we probably don't want to talk about that yet.
Not yet.
But that's going to be big. I'm telling everybody right now that's going to be big.
We've got some big stuff working.
Yeah, so that, and then I have another secret project that's 12 books long, and that'll be fun. So, and I gave my editor 7 pitches, and there's something I can't say that they liked, and that might be my next print book.
Right. Okay. Well, good. Well, you got your hands full.
I hope so.
Yeah. All right.
How about you?
Well, I got a lot of things working. I'm, of course, everybody's waiting for Oklahoma, which is the second part of Pennsylvania. My intention is to write the first 3 parts of Oklahoma in the month of November. I'm working on a project with you right now, and I'm going to get on that full speed here this week. Hopefully get that thing knocked out, and then I've got another one that's also associated with you that we can't talk about. And then, so that's quite a bit of writing between now and the end of the year, and I've got and I mentioned this at the Dragon Con at the panel when I sat next to Jim Butcher. I said I've got Amish robot Frankenstein story that is currently the agent is shopping that story, but there'll be a time limit on the ability of the agent to shop that story, and at some point my overwhelming motivation to get that story out there, everybody that has read it that has also read Pennsylvania has said they like it better than Pennsylvania. So
yeah,
and that's called Brother Frankenstein, and so that is something I could.
You let me read the first few chapters, and I absolutely. You said, well, what should I do here? What should I add? And I think my note to you was actually, I think it's pitch perfect. I wouldn't do anything. The crime of letting a big publisher represent that is that I think that would look cool with a Mike Corley cover. And if you do make a deal, I would try to say something like Mike Corley's got to do the cover.
Right. I think it'd be perfect Mike Corley type of project. And there's going to be a window, and I don't know how long that window is going to be where I'm going to allow them to actually shop it. And my point all along has been, once I finish the book, then the present value of it is too much for me to sell it. Yeah. And so I'm going to give them a certain amount of time while I'm working on these other 3 books, and Oklahoma starting in November. And then as soon as that's done, if there hasn't been any movement on Brother Frankenstein, then I'm going to knock that thing out of the park and get it out there. And if I had to pick anything that I was writing right now that I think could probably be a nuclear kind of story, that might be one of them. So, and I imagine the covers, and I can imagine the film of this thing. It is Witness meets the Hulk meets Terminator.
It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer for any publisher to pick up, and I know your agent because we have the same agent, and I know that my last meeting with my agent was spent talking about your book and how great he thinks it is. So yeah.
I think it's going to do well. But all right, so I had a few questions that had come in by email, and so we've got a few minutes here. We got about 5 minutes. You're going to
I got a
cramp. Beverage. You got a cramp. You're not used to this.
Cramp from sitting. Oh.
Well, do some toe touches or something.
Oh my gosh.
What you want to do? I know I don't look very athletic, but what you want to do is a couple of these.
Yeah.
And then you do some of these here, and then some of that stuff. That'll help you out. All right. So I actually did get a question from a fan who wanted. It was a writer wanted to talk about discoverability, and we only got about 5 minutes. But knowing what you know now and having participated on both sides with mainstream publishing and indie publishing, what advice would you have for a new writer who has put out almost nothing, as far as they've got a first book coming out? What should be their next steps?
I think Woody Allen is a really interesting guy to look at when you look at a creative life, and we all have Woody Allen movies that we like, and we have ones that are dogs. But I read his biography and read about him, and the thing that he does as soon as he finishes working on a manuscript or a script, he immediately the next day starts a new one. And if you think that the one book, your baby, that you've written is going to take you all the way to J.K. Rowlingville, you're sadly deceived. You need to write about 40 books.
Right.
And maybe you just need to write every day. Take a day off every day of the week, like Sunday is a good day to rest, or Saturday. But rest and write and write and write and write. And this is the biggest tip I would give every writer. Sit down in a place where you're comfortable doing this, but after you've gone through your book 6 times, on the 7th time, start reading it out loud to yourself, because it sounds different when you read it out loud. And you should do that until it's flawless. And the best way to get good at reading out loud is listen to John Grisham books or Stephen King books as read by narrators, and learn how to do it like they do it and perform those characters. Because you'll hear when that character that you tried to write with that down-home Mississippi mud black accent can't necessarily do it, I'm not really doing that right now. I'm doing a Georgia accent, but if I was to do a Mississippi accent, it would be different, or Alabama, or those kinds of things. But when you read it out loud, you will find the notes that you're missing. And so I'm telling you, it's absolutely vital that you perform this book before anybody reads it. And I would say you should go through it minimum of 2 to 3 times reading out loud.
Absolutely. All right. Hey, we're going to have to close it down. I want everybody to go to Amazon.com, look up Soda Pop Soldier, buy that book. I've got a couple of things I need you to do for me. We've got a cyber bundle right now available at storybundle.com. It's a cyberpunk story bundle, and there's some great books in there, including one by Billy D. Williams, Lando Calrissian.
Billy D. Really?
Right.
Not the same one, right?
Same Billy D. Williams. Yeah, he wrote before he died, of course. He wrote a cyberpunk book, and it's available in that same story bundle.
Billy D. Williams, he's not dead?
Yeah, he is.
He's dead?
Yeah, he's for sure.
I don't think so.
We'll look it up afterwards, but I'm almost positive. Okay. Last thing is the Stars and Empire box set, which is only 99 cents and has a big time space opera authors. Go check that out on Amazon.com. Okay, everybody, we got to go. We're running out of time. Thanks, Nick. We'll do this again in a month, and then we'll be talking to you soon. Bye-bye, everybody.
See you later.